Welcome to Soul Sisteries. Hey, oh my gosh, that was really exciting, wasn't it, sis? We just talked with Neal Woodson, whom we didn't know before this, but our wonderful Kirk brought him to us. And now I'm so grateful and took away so many nuggets. I have notes all over my page about, oh, remember this, remember this.
Yes, me too. And movies to watch and books to read, and really just that message of going out and doing some good. And I think that is just a great way to enter into our week and our weekend here.
Go do some good. Hey,
Yep.
everybody, come do some good and listen to Soul Sisteries right now with us and enjoy Neal Woodson. We are so thrilled and honored to be talking with author, speaker, presenter, mentor, Neal Woodson right now. Let me tell you a little bit about Neal. Neal has spent the past couple of decades helping individuals and organizations elevate their leadership and service by exploring where the two intersect. His focus is on fostering a human-centered relational approach built on compassion, ethics, and meaningful connection. How much do we love this? With a diverse background that includes roles in retail, restaurants, education, hospitality, and corporate training, Neal brings real-world experience to his work. Through his writing, teaching, and speaking, Neal encourages others to think differently, act intentionally, and find greater fulfillment through service. He leads workshops, delivers keynotes that help organizations create cultures centered on well-being for both employees and customers. As Neal says, go do some good. Neal, welcome to Soul Sisteries.
Thank you very much. It's great to meet you too. I have to give a shout out to my good friend, dear friend, your producer, Kirk Lane, who actually invited me here, and I already feel like I'm part of the family. So this is good.
Awesome. We're so glad that he did. And as we were just saying, Kirk is the third sister in the group. So that totally works. So thanks, Kirk.
Yeah.
So, Neal, really where we like to start when talking with anyone, we are obviously in Soul Sisteries invested in the story, in your story, in people's stories. Everybody's got many stories to them, right? We want to know your story that brings you to where you are today, doing this work that you do. But as you get into that, we'd love first, if you don't mind, share with us your hope through. What's your particular angle? What's your particular way in which you hold on to hope throughout your journey?
Well, I think first we probably should get into some defining of what hope is. I think hope means different things to different people.
Sure.
I actually thought about this because when Kirk invited me and said, "Hey, would you be on this podcast?" And I said, "Sure." And I did a little reading about you, and I knew hope was a big thing. And I thought, wow, I have not really thought that clearly about hope. So I began to look at that and think, what is hope? And I was brought up in a relatively religious family, a conservative Christian religious family. I'm not necessarily that way now, but that's the way I was brought up. And so we did a lot of Bible reading and things. And I do remember in Hebrews, it says something to the effect that hope is faith in things unseen. And the more I thought about it, I thought, well, that's actually kind of the way I feel about hope. Hope is knowing that there is something better. There can be something better. But then oddly, this morning I was working out and I was listening to another podcast, and it was a podcast with these two psychologists talking about hope. And they defined it from a psychological viewpoint of being something like that, seeing a better future. But they included action in it.
Yes.
They said hope is a verb. Yep. Hope means you got to do something. You can influence that future. And that put a whole new thing on it. And that was literally this morning. That put a whole new kind of flavor to it. And so for me, I think what I've been doing for the last 20 years has been largely in that direction, because my thinking is that we can have better workplaces. We can have better places where we buy. We can have better lives at home if we serve each other, because that's what we're built to do. We're made to help each other. I mean, we're not the biggest, fastest, or strongest animals in the jungle.
Right.
And we've relied on helping each other from the time we appeared on the planet.
Yeah.
And we kind of give lip service to that. We don't pay enough attention to it. And we typically think, oh, when you say service, people automatically go to it's customer service. No, it's not. Service is much bigger than customer service. It's something we all do every day, all day. I mean, if you open the door for somebody in the store, that's service. If you smile at somebody, if you go buy milk on the way home, that's service. And we do it all the time. And it's so important to what we do. So for me, my hope through is, I hope that through service, we can make our world a better place. And I certainly want to make it a better place when I leave it than when I found it.
Yeah,
So
for sure. So will you, I know you kind of shared how you're finding this hope through the service that you're doing, but can you share what got you here? Like you talked about your early upbringing in the church. Where did it go from there?
Well,
for this particular angle, that it's gotten you to like.
Well,
this,
let me go back. This is gonna sound crazy. I know you say, tell us
please.
your story.
Nothing here is crazy.
No, but people go, oh, what's your story? And you go, well, I was born in. I go, wait a minute. But I want to start there because there's something that happened.
Yeah.
Early on, that seriously has impacted the rest of my journey. So I was born in Virginia, in Norfolk, Virginia. And my dad always used to boast, when you look out your mom's window, after you're born, you looked at the Atlantic fleet,
Wow.
But he worked for the railroad, and the railroad moves people around like the military, move all over the place. So my life was marked by moving a lot. But born in Virginia, and less than a year later, we moved to West Virginia. And we moved to a little place called Williamson, West Virginia, which is in the mountains, in the coal fields. In fact, the radio station there is called WBTH, which stands for Between Two Hills.
Oh, wow.
But when we were there, first big major life event, I was less than a year old, and I had what they call an infant tachycardia, which is kind of like a baby heart attack.
Yeah.
And basically your heart starts beating out of control. And I'm sitting in a high chair, and my brother walked past and he said, Mommy, is he supposed to be blue?
Oh.
They rushed me to the hospital, and we get there. They put me in an oxygen tent. And at the time, the doctor that took my case was a woman from Korea. Now, I say that because this is the early 60s. And in the early 60s, there weren't many women doctors, period, much less a Korean doctor in the wilds of West Virginia.
Right? How did that happen? Wow.
And she comes to my parents and she says, look, I've seen this before. I've had it happen in Korea. And I can tell you this, if we don't do anything, he's going to die. But we have a procedure that we've been doing in Korea for years, and it's to give them a massive dose of digitalis to slow their heart down. And I can only give you a 50-50 chance on that.
Good golly.
Well, thank God my parents,
yes,
they took the 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
And I'm here today. So my mom, her whole entire life, she called me her miracle child. And she always told me, she said, you are here for a reason. Don't squander it. Help others. Do something good. Just, don't squander your life because you're here she was very clear. She always used to say, you're here for a reason. So that for me, that was a big, first life lesson. And I've carried it through probably my whole life that, we all have this opportunity to contribute. So don't squander your life. Don't squander it on, I want to go out and be rich. No, do something that's going to matter, because nobody, I've never walked through a cemetery and seen somebody's net worth on their
Right.
tombstone,
Right.
Mm-mm.
you know? So that was kind of the first life lesson. Um,
Hmm.
from there, we moved back to Virginia. We moved up into the Blue Ridge Mountains into a city called Roanoke, Virginia. I lived there through fourth grade. Then we moved to Ohio, on the banks of the Ohio River.
Wow.
And that's another life event happened. In fifth grade, they start looking for people to be in the band.
Mm.
Mhm.
And I wanted to be a sax player, or a percussionist, a drummer or a sax player. And the band
Cool.
director looked at me and said, "We don't need any more sax players or drummers. We need trombone players." And he handed me a trombone.
Oh, golly.
And so I started playing trombone.
Very
And
cool.
then we moved back to Roanoke, Virginia, where I lived until I graduated from high school. I got very, very entrenched in the music program. I became, a member of the Roanoke Youth Symphony. I was actually asked to be part of the Roanoke Civic Ballet Orchestra, which was
Wow.
that was a professional group. That was actually players from the Roanoke Symphony, and they needed somebody to play second trombone. And my trombone teacher said, "Hey, you're the guy."
Wow.
And so I was playing pro gigs. I was playing whenever I could play, but my school band, I pretty much gave my heart and soul to them. And, I did everything. And when I was a senior, I became lieutenant in the band. We had officers in the band. We had a captain, and that was kind of the right-hand man of the director. And then the lieutenant, and that was me. And my job was kind of to make sure everything got secured and was in the right place and people were doing the right things. I made sure that instruments were where they were supposed to be and the practice rooms were clean and just things like that. And so anyway, I gave my heart and soul to the band. I was there, I came in early and stayed late. I was the guy that helped out on every fruit drive. If anybody that's ever been involved in a high school band has done a fruit drive, you go around and you get people to buy fruit. You raise money for the band,
Yes.
bake sales and fruit drives.
Wow.
And so at the end of every year, we had an awards ceremony at a band banquet. And so my senior year, we go to this band banquet and there's most improved and they announce everybody who was an all county band or all state band and all those things. And they give out a very special award called the Bandsman of the Year, the John Philip Sousa Award. And I knew I probably wouldn't get that because the captain usually gets that. So I was pretty set on the fact that I was going to get nothing. I was going to go to this thing. It would be like, here's the officers and the bandsman of the year is the captain. And that's what happened. But then the band director stayed and he stayed up there for a minute. And people are like, what's he doing? He said, I've got one more award to give out. He said, this is an award that I've only ever given out once before. And said, this is very, very special because I'm giving this. And this is to someone who has done more for this organization than anybody in this room. And he gave it to me. And it was the most outstanding contribution award. And I remember getting back in the car and my dad said, you know what? 1 million people win those other awards, but you're one of 2.
How precious is that?
And yeah, it's still hanging up on a wall in my house.
Love it.
And second life lesson, no matter how unimportant the work you do or how unimportant it might seem,
Right.
you can make a difference that you know nothing about.
Yeah.
You might not know anything about, I'm making a difference for somebody, but you probably are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from there, I went to college, got a bachelor's degree in comp theory, thought I was going to write a bunch of music to change the world. Did fall in love with my high school sweetheart. We got married. Went to grad school, got another degree, a master's degree in comp theory, which, by the way, you don't get paid any money to do comp theory.
Not the big bucks.
Yeah. Well, of course, I was thinking, I'm going to get a break somewhere and write music for, a movie or get an orchestra to commission me to write something. Anyway, I moved to Baltimore, Maryland, which is where I live now, and became a member of a music group that a friend of mine had, and they played all their own music, and it's all kind of arty music. And I thought, well, this might be, something to give me that break. And we played a lot of arts festivals and colleges and things like that. But you don't make any money doing that. So I worked in restaurants. I was a bartender for years. Worked in retail. I even worked in a sales department for a forklift company for a while. And through all of that, one big outcome was, one, didn't really make it in the music business, and two, my marriage fell apart. And we ended up getting divorced. But one thing that I learned from that, or a couple big things. One was that whenever something like that happens, it's never one person's fault. It's both people's fault. You both did something wrong. It doesn't matter what, even if somebody, broke the rules, somebody slept with somebody else or whatever it was, you both made mistakes. You both blew it. Both, this is both people's thing. But the big life lesson that the two of us learned was that life's too short to go through it with hate. And so we both decided we would be friends. And we are still friends to this day.
Beautiful.
Good.
And it's true. I've talked to other friends of mine who have gone through divorces or are going through divorces, and I've told them, look, whatever you do, don't hate. Figure out a way to be friends. So anyway, a few years later, I met another woman. I was actually writing music for a dance company. And she was in the dance company, and she was teaching at a college, and we met and we got married. And here we are, lo and behold, 34 years later. And
oh my goodness. Beautiful.
But she got me some teaching work. She was teaching in a high school and also at a college, but she was teaching at a high school. And I kind of, through her, made my way into being the orchestra director at a high school. And also taught at a community college, and I taught at one class at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. But it was all contract work. So from semester to semester, you kind of didn't know, how much am I going to make any money? Am I going to be able to pay my bills? It was like a roller coaster. Well, my daughter Hannah was born, and we were able to make it okay on that. And we lived in a little tiny house, and it was all good. And then my wife got pregnant with child number 2. And that's when she kind of looked at me and said, okay, this is not going to work. We're barely making it now. We need a bigger house, and we need more steady, reliable income. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I always tell people, that's when she told me I need to get a big boy job.
Time to grow up.
And so that's when I went looking for something else. And this was back in the days when you looked in the paper at help wanted ads.
Yeah.
And I found this ad for, audio visuals in the hotel industry. And I was thinking, I can do that because I've run sound, I've run live sound before for bands and things. When you're a musician, you learn how to do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and even when I worked with dance companies, I did a little bit of lighting and stuff like that. So I was like, I can do this. And I was thinking, how hard can it be? Oh, that was wrong. A really difficult job. Ask Kirk. He knows for sure. But for those of you who don't know what that means, what AV industry is, it's sound and lighting and video and screens and all that stuff for meetings and hotels and conventions. That's what that's all about. So I landed that job, and I was managing a team in a hotel and was doing that just fine. And through various conversations, people learned that I used to teach. And this company was just starting their training department. And they said, hey, you've got teaching experience. Would you like to be one of our instructors? I said, sure, that'd be great. So I started to teach some classes. You did your regular job, but they'd say, we need somebody to teach this class. And so you teach these classes. Well, that started to happen more and more and more. And I talked to the director of the training department. He said, well, we like you. We think you do this pretty well. I was like, oh, okay, great, fantastic. And I was doing it more and more and more. Well, one day I was actually driving back from the Eastern Shore in Maryland, over on the other side of the Chesapeake Bay. And I'm crossing the bridge, and there's this big bay bridge. And it's, for a lot of people, it's really scary. It's a really high bridge, and it goes over the Chesapeake Bay, and it's a long way down. And my phone starts ringing. I just glance down, and it's the CEO of the company. And man, I'm like, okay, I went over in the other lane. I'm like, well, what am I doing? I'm on the Bay Bridge. So I zoom over the bridge and get over the other side and immediately park and answer the phone. And he starts talking to me about the training department. He says, I'd really love it if you would work full time in the training department. We want to move you out of what you're doing and put you full time in the training department. And I need somebody to build a leadership training program. And I think that would be you.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, it was like, when the angels start singing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The angels were singing. And I was like, yes, I'm in. I want to do that. And so, to be honest, that's kind of what I've done for the last 20 some years is do that.
Yeah.
And I finished out working. COVID kind of stopped that career because it stopped a lot of people's careers. But I finished out the AV career teaching and coaching and doing all that. And now I still do that kind of on a freelance basis. And I write and blog and do all that stuff. And I'll give you my final kind of life lesson out of all that was, don't think you know exactly where you're headed.
Mm-mm.
Because if you start taking all the opportunities that come, you never know where they're going to lead. And I'll be honest, as I look back at the music thing, I was just never, I'll be honest, I was never good enough. And a lot of people say, don't ever say that about yourself. I'm like, no, I'm being honest. I was never an A level guy. I could be maybe a B level, but to be A level, you've got to have some really natural gifts that I just didn't have. And you've got to have just a high level of discipline and be willing to, practice. I was not one to go sit in a practice room for hours and hours and hours and hours. I'd go in there. They said, you got to practice at least 2 hours a day. I'd go in and literally a timer, ding, 2 hours. You're done.
I'm done.
It's happy hour,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it just takes something I didn't have. But when I got into teaching people, particularly in the business realm and going in and sharing kind of a vision for a better world, that's when I realized this is what I do. This is, I just honestly, there's a time when you just realize this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and when my mom said, you've got a contribution to make, I was like, that's it. This is what it was. This is why that Korean doctor was there.
Yes. And you focus more on service, just like that doctor did, right? She was there to provide this amazing service.
Well, the service thing came almost by accident in a way. I built leadership training program and had to there was obviously some service elements in all of that. And then later the company started to put more of an emphasis on service and started to build out things like, sending out surveys and doing all that stuff. And I remember sitting in a meeting because since I taught a lot of the customer service stuff, I was in a lot of those meetings and they said, well, what are we going to do with all this data when it comes back? And I was the idiot who raised this hand and I said, and I'm in this room with all these senior vice presidents, right? And I raised my hand kind of meagerly, meek little me. And I said, well, it would probably be good to have someone who goes out in the field and explains and helps these people kind of decipher what things mean and then helps them work on how they're going to fix it. And one of the vice presidents said, you're the guy for that.
Yeah.
And so literally I spent the last, 10 years, 8 years doing just that. I was flying all over the country. That's where I met Kirk, flying around the country, coaching teams, helping them build plans for improvement, things like that. But it was still teaching. It was just a little bit different with a different slant. But I got much more kind of entrenched in what is service all about? What does it really mean? Started really doing a lot more research into that and how it relates to not only work, but how does it relate to life?
Yeah.
And so it became a much bigger influence on me to the point where leadership, to me, when we talk about leadership is service. And I even build that out to the fact that business is service. And life is service in many ways.
So Neal, I'm hearing this common theme throughout a lot of what you're sharing, which I would love for you to speak on a little bit, which is as these opportunities come up or as you co-create these opportunities, your inclination is the yes to them, is stepping forward with it. Like, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can try that. Yeah. Sure, trombone. Okay, yes. Sure, teaching. Okay, yes. Sure, go out and teach people. Okay, yes. I'm going to do that. What do you think it is in you that generates that is your inclination? And I can even tie it to one other thing. When you originally said your mother's your mother's comment to you is that you are here for a reason, and that was one of those first life lessons. For some people, that could have been, oh my God, what a heavy burden to bear.
Right.
This, I'm here for, but not for you. Your choice, your yes was, I'm here for a reason. What am I going to do with that? It's that spin. So all of that together, what is it in you that moves in that direction?
Um, wow, that's big kettle of fish you're opening up. Well, let's start at the beginning. The thing, instead of seeing the thing that my mom would say all the time, "You're here for a reason," I took it more as a responsibility.
Mm.
I got to do that. Many, many, many years later, I used that same thing on my dad. My dad had a double aneurysm in his aorta. He had one aneurysm up here near the sternum and one down near his belly button. And they both were at the same time. And he almost bled out. In fact, they lost him on the table a couple times, but they basically took that big chunk of his aorta out and put in a hose.
My gosh.
And he went through this depression, which people do a lot when they have major surgery. And he just wouldn't do anything. And finally, I remember talking to him and I said, "Dad, you've been bought some time." And I used it against him. I said, "You're here for a reason. You're here for a reason. There's some reason you were, that didn't happen by accident. You're here for a reason. You've got something you've got to do." And I know my mom told me, she said that was one of the things that helped him get back up, and he started going. So I guess for me, it's responsibility, that plays into that. The other part is, why say yes? I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not the most confident person in the world. I'm a person that needs reassurance a lot. It's just a natural thing for me, for a variety of reasons. And I'm not the most confident. So sometimes I just take it as a challenge and say, okay, I'm not confident about this. It scares the hell out of me, but I'm going to try it because I don't know, you need to. You need to try this. You need to do this. And I'm not that way about everything. I look at, I go stand on the edge of a big high diving board and I'm like, hell no. I'm not doing that.
Leave that for someone else.
Well, maybe that's a voice of reason kicking in.
Yeah.
But the trombone thing, I looked at that and I was like, well, everybody's going to be a beginner.
Yeah.
I mean, what have I got to lose? If I sound like an idiot, I can always just quit and be done with it, but I took to it. I was able to take to it, and it actually, my parents were pretty good about it. They were both pretty encouraging. They were, you seem to be doing well at that. You're doing better at that. You're getting better. And I'm sure to them, it was just like honk, honk, honk. Because those first band books suck. They're just like bum, 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 beep, 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 beep. That's all you're doing.
Yeah.
And after a while, as a parent, you're like, oh God, kill me.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just quick interjection. My eldest son was first a drummer. Well, that was actually not. He did piano first, but then he went to drumming. And I can still hear in my head those initial paradiddles, like, oh my God, I cannot unhear that. It was just all day, every day, that.
And the only reason when they're drummers that you can stand it is because they go, it's a paradiddle, and you kind of laugh.
Yeah.
They really call it a paradiddle?
They sure do.
And there's a flammadiddle too, But so I had that. And then a lot of the other yeses, I don't know, sometimes there's just a voice, you get this voice that says, go, go with that. And the whole teaching thing, I grew up, my dad, unfortunately, well, fortunately and unfortunately, my dad worked in a career that he did because he had a family. And of course, in his generation, that was a lot of your generation. You get a job,
Yeah.
you work it for your whole life,
Yeah.
whether it's your dream job or not. And
Right.
I understand that. And that happens to a ton of people.
Yeah.
How many people do you know that have their dream job? If everybody had
Yeah.
their dream job, hell, they'd be NFL quarterbacks and movies,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But he worked that job, but what he really wanted to do was teach. So he took every opportunity to do it. He was a Sunday school teacher. Every Sunday he taught Sunday school. Um, and he ended up, when he worked for the railroad, actually working in their training department. So he did some teaching. I never really saw him do teaching at all, but I guess it was just kind of in my blood somehow, or hanging around back here in that back part of your brain. And when it came up to do this, I was like, yeah, I want to do that. Something just spoke to me and said, that's where you should be. And so, yes,
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah. So a lot of people, though, would run away from those challenges. Well, that's I'm heading to music. This is what I'm doing. I'm not going to do these other things. But something in you told you, go with it. And you said it doesn't happen all the time, that there's things that you don't, jumping off the cliff. Well, I wouldn't do that either. But what is it? How did you develop that? I'm going to call it confidence, even though you said that you don't really have the confidence. But how did you develop that? Like, it's almost like, well, I'm just going to do it, and if it doesn't work out, then I'll go to the next thing, maybe. But how did you develop that along the way?
That was a tough road, because for all of those things, you're going to be on stage. A lot of the things I said yes to, you got to be on stage. What's ironic is that I have a stage fright.
Yeah.
When I had to do my senior recital in college, I remember a friend gave me a half of, God, what's the pill? It was some heart pill that her uncle had. And she said, I took a half of one of these before my recital. It really settled me down. So I took this pill. Anyway,
man.
and then right before the recital, or right before my comp recital, which is equally,
Yes.
crazy, because you're on stage. I had to conduct for that. So, and went to his office. He said, I know you're just frozen in fear. And he opened the bottom drawer of his desk drawer, and he had a bottle of Jack Daniels, and he poured us both a shot.
Oh
So he
my.
stood in his office, and we both did a shot of Jack. He said, this is
All
going to
right,
help you
then.
out right here. And it was a bonding experience. It was great,
Yeah.
But we both had a shot of Jack, and I went out and did my recital.
Well, as you
But
do.
Wow.
But I have a lot of stage fright, and I just had to get over that, and it was tough, because I also have an anxiety disorder, and a lot of men between the ages of, I don't remember which one of you is a psychologist, right?
That would be Diana.
Diana, you're a psychologist. And I know a lot of men kind of between the age, like in their 30s, I think a lot of men kind of have this anxiety thing. And I read somewhere that the belief is that one of the reasons for that is that that's when men pick up a lot of responsibility. Traditionally, they start families, they've got a career that's starting, they just bought a house. And so you got all this stuff lumped on you, and all of a sudden, you get paralyzed. And so anybody who has any kind of predisposition to that, it kind of kicks it into gear. And that's exactly what happened to me. And so I was on Xanax for a while, and I was in a little bit of therapy and this, that, and the other. And that worked itself out. But I think part of the way it worked itself out was because I had to get up in front of people, and more I would get up in front of people, and my stage fright started to lessen. It started to go down to the fact that, I'd get in front of people and just go, I've done this before. You've done this before. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always joke with people, when you get up in front of somebody, if you don't know something, just start making stuff up. Do stuff.
Yeah.
They
They don't know.
Well, we always used to joke when I was in an orchestra, we'd always joke, if you miss a note, most of those people in the audience don't know.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
In the world of theater, work with I do a lot of children's theater, and this is absolutely what we tell them. You just keep going, because if you telegraph, that this is a big mistake, then everybody's, feeling badly for you. But if you just move on,
Nobody,
and
yeah,
nobody thinks twice about it,
no,
and
not
all
at
is well.
all.
And even if it was a mistake, if you move on with that attitude, people are willing to move on with you
For
rather
sure.
than like feeling sorry for you or feeling
Yeah.
worse for you.
Well,
Yeah.
I remember at one point when we lived in Ohio, we went to see a play in Columbus, and it was a play called Norman, Is That You?
Mm.
And the star was, and I can't think of his name, he was Harvey Korman.
Oh,
Ooh,
Harvey
how
Korman, who
fun.
used to be on, for those who don't know who Harvey Korman
yeah.
is, Harvey Korman was in Blazing Saddles.
Mhm.
He was also a big star on the Carol Burnett show.
Yes.
And he was the one that a lot of times got everybody cracking up on the Carol Burnett show. Well,
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
Took
Norman, Is
great
That You?
pride in it.
When Norman, Is That You? He forgot his lines in one place. And he started just making stuff up. And he got everybody in stitches, and everybody on stage was laughing, and everybody in the audience was laughing, and everybody knew that it was all
Yeah.
a big mistake. And I guess maybe that had lingered for me,
Mm.
thinking that, well, if that person can get up there and just be an idiot,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but everybody accepts
Everybody
it.
had a great time.
Everybody
Yeah.
had a great time. And that's what everybody, I couldn't tell you a thing about that play
Yeah.
except that.
That, yeah.
And
Hmm.
so for me, getting in front of people to do that, I still get nervous. If you don't get nervous, there's probably something wrong with you. I don't get frozen though, like I used to, but you'll see me backstage pacing and going over whatever I'm going to talk about 100,000 times and rewording it and changing it and, all of that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I had this big awareness a few years back that like changed the game for me on so many things. I had this awareness that, whoa, confidence doesn't just come. It's not that I just suddenly feel confident. I choose confidence. I'm choosing to be confident
Mm.
here.
right.
And that like flipped everything for me. It worked for me
Mm.
and how to go about it for
Mm.
for what it's worth. So that was a big revelation. But I
Well,
want to ask you something. Oh, go ahead, Neil.
no, I was going to say, well, Simon Sinek, you know who Simon Sinek is, right?
Yes.
The why guy, right? Everybody,
Yeah.
Mr. Optimism. He always says, don't tell people you're nervous, tell them you're excited.
Yeah.
We do that in
A different way to
They
reframe.
use
You
it. You
Yeah.
use that. Use
Yeah.
that energy. It's just energy.
It's
Use
the
it.
same.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So anyway, go ahead,
They're,
Donna.
they're like this. Yes.
No, I love it. I love all of this. It's so great. Thank you. Thank you, Neil, for everything. That I want to go back to, okay, that kid who's being handed that trombone and, about that age and that guy, if we were to go talk to him, what would he say about where you are right now and what you're doing? What would be his thoughts and feelings about all of this?
If he could see in the future, if he could hold up that crystal ball and
Yeah.
see where it all went,
Mm.
I think he'd go, wow, I can't wait.
Ah.
Oh, I love that
I
so
have been
much.
really, really, even through the hard things, and going through a divorce is hard. I don't
Mhm.
care what end of that is. And I know a lot of guys that think, well, I left my wife. She was horrible, blah, blah, blah. You
Mm.
know what? There's still a dark night of the soul.
Mhm.
Everybody goes through it. And I don't know if either one of you have been through that, but
Mm-mm.
I
you
have.
probably split up with some partner, some friend, something that was tough, right? Or someone died, because it's a lot like a death, in a way.
Mhm.
And that's tough. But you know what? I wouldn't be where I am without it.
Right. No.
And the things that I had to go through because of it made me a better person.
Yeah.
Made
For
me.
sure.
We didn't have children. That was a good thing.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling it made me a better dad for the future.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but I've been very blessed. My wife now is an amazing woman, very smart, super organized, loves to travel. She's from Scotland,
Mm.
and we've been blessed to be able to travel a lot because of her work.
Mm.
We traveled all over the world. And I think, if I were a kid, I'd look at that and say, wow, you went to the pyramids? Holy cow. You did this and you've done, I can't wait. I think that's what he'd say.
Yeah. I love that. So I think your wife probably inspires you somewhat, but I would love to hear like who or what you get your inspiration from.
I don't want to pinpoint anybody in particular. It's probably a conglomeration of people
Mhm.
who inspire me. And a lot of times it might be just something people have done. Whenever I see people who have conquered something that just seems unconquerable,
Yeah.
when I see somebody like the other day, I was watching the Masters and they had an ad and this kid drove the ball and they pan out and he's only got one arm.
Mm,
And it was a beautiful drive. I
yeah.
was like, oh my God, that's inspiring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Inspiring, you
Yeah.
know? When I see people who have some horrible disease or problem and they still keep going and they still
Yeah.
keep talking about their life in a positive way,
Right.
when I would probably be going, life sucks,
Mm,
they're still plowing through. So those kinds of things really inspire me. And then there are a lot of different kind of writers and people that I've read that
mm,
say certain things. Seth Godin inspires me a lot of times with certain things he says. He's got kind of a wacky writing style, but
mm.
he does throw out these lines and these particular things over and over and over that are inspiring,
Yeah.
if we want a better world, we need to build better things,
Yeah.
that inspires me. So there are a lot of different kinds of people in that boat.
Yeah.
And I'm not a incredibly religious guy, but Jesus inspires me.
Mm.
The reason Jesus inspires me is not because of dying on a cross and all that stuff. And I know I'm not saying anything about that,
Right.
but this was a guy that was up against every odd.
Mm-hmm.
He stood so hard for believing in something
Mm-hmm.
that matters. He stood up for, to me,
People.
my favorite story in all the gospels is the woman at the well. He goes to the well and he goes to this woman who's she's going to be stoned to death.
Right.
And he basically chases away all these guys. And he says, what have you done? She says, basically says, I've sinned. I've done all this bad stuff. I've slept with men. He goes, you're okay. Go and sin no more. You're good. And I'm like, that's the world I want to live in.
For sure.
You and me both.
And I'm like, I can get behind that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that inspires the crud out of me, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. No, it did. And you mentioned the writers that you appreciate, and behind you,
that's one.
Yes, one. But I'm looking behind you to your book, and I would love for you to talk a little bit about your book, if you would.
I've written 2. I've actually got a 3rd on the way, which Kirk knows about because he's been one of my pre-readers.
Lucky.
And he's going to get pride of place in the acknowledgments on that. But he's been one of my pre-readers, and I so appreciate that. I've written 2 books. The first book was about coaching in the workplace. This book called Giving a Shit, and apologies to anybody who that offends, but the subtitle is how a willingness to be an inconvenience can transform your life and your business. And so it was kind of a weird start to that book. It started as a rebuke of the current kind of customer experience world that we see all the time and how complicated people have made it and all this stuff. And that quickly transformed into something else. My wife we had planned this trip just before the pandemic, and the pandemic put that on the back burner.
Yeah.
And so through canceling all these things, my wife is she's the travel person in our house. She does all that stuff. And she was canceling, plane flights and hotels and all that garbage. And one day she just threw down the phone in exasperation and said, why is this so damn difficult? Why don't these companies care about their customers? And of course, knowing what I was doing, for a living, I went upstairs and I said, well, it's kind of what business is all about. I mean, they're there to make money. Well, actually, that stuck in my craw. And I started thinking, wait a minute, that's not what businesses are for. They're not there to make, yes, they have to make money, but they're not there to make money. Just like we have to breathe, but I'm not on earth to breathe.
I like
what a great analogy.
Or even, I bought a car to travel, not to fill with fuel.
Right.
I have to fill it with fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more I looked into that, took me on a little journey. And the journey, part of that journey was looking at, well, what are humans here to do?
Mm-hmm.
And what you begin to see is that a lot of people think that we're built to compete and fight against each other and rise to the top.
Yeah.
Ugh.
When all the research that I did said the opposite. It said, actually, about 200,000 years ago, we were actually much more cooperative and helpful to each other, partly because we had to.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
If we weren't, we'd all be dead.
Right.
No,
Right.
it's interesting when you say that. When that show Survivor first came out, I heard about it, and my thought was, well, that'll be an intriguing social thing to see how people work together to survive. Literally, that is what I thought that show was going to be. It is so not what that show is.
But remember, they set all that up.
Yes.
But they set all this, that's all rigged.
Right.
They set all that stuff up.
Of course.
Yeah.
But everything that I was researching started to say the opposite.
Yeah.
And I even came across a really good book by a guy named Rutger Bregman called Humankind, where he did a lot of that research for me, which was great.
Yeah.
But in it, there's a story about a real life Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember when you were in high school, you probably read Lord of the Rings, right? William Golding's book about the kids that are plane crashes on an island. All
Lord
the
of the
adults.
Flies, I think you mean, not Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Flies.
Yeah.
What did I say?
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Flies. Yeah.
We're not talking hobbits here. We are talking about the crash landing on the island and survival with Piggy.
I am so glad you caught that.
I was wondering where you were going.
I would say
not a lot of high schools read.
And you're like, wow, wrong author.
I did it.
Everything.
I did it. Yes. I thought I didn't
Lord
read
of the
that
Flies.
One. Okay.
Yes.
Lord of the Flies by William Golding.
Kirk can get all of that in the editing. But
so start again.
Anyway,
right here, Kirk.
so these kids, the plane crashes on the island, all the adults are killed, and they're left to their own ways. And essentially they resort to savagery, right?
Yes.
And 2 or 3 kids get killed in the story before they're found. Well, in the early 60s, there were some kids that this virtually happened to them. They stole a boat because they were in a parochial school that they hated on a South Pacific island, and they were on their way to find somewhere else. They wanted to live somewhere else. I think they were trying to get to Australia, and a storm came, and they were shipwrecked. It's starting to sound like Gilligan's Island, right?
Right. Yeah.
So they did the same thing. They start to set up but they built a community. Right. And they had rules and laws, and they actually built a little gym. They gardened. They did all this stuff, and they were there for over a year.
Oh, wow.
And when they were found, no one had been killed. None of the stuff that happened in Lord of the Flies, none of that stuff happened.
Yeah.
They cooperated. They helped each other. They realized we better get back to the good angels of our nature, because that's the only way we're going to survive.
Survival depends on it.
What I found through the research for this book was that we can choose another path. We don't have to go to work every day and beat each other up. We don't have to take advantage of customers. We don't have to do all these things. We certainly don't have to do it to make a ton of profit. We have to make a profit, but we don't have to make more than enough.
Yeah.
We can do it a different way.
Yeah.
And so that kind of was where I got kicked into gear. Now, in defense of all those people that say, what about, though, the fact that we do compete and we do all that? Yes, we do have a part of us that is that. We do. However, it's reserved for a specific time in life.
Right.
When we get pushed into a corner, yes, we fight to survive. But it's not the way we're meant to be 24/7. And the reason I say that is because our biology says it. Our biology, when we do good things and help each other, we're actually gifted from Mother Nature with a little cocktail. She gives us a little cocktail of feel-good juice, right? Dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. And on top of that, it not only makes us feel good, it blocks cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And a lot of the bad stuff for us, like heart disease and depression and high blood pressure and all that stuff, comes from cortisol. And when we have that rushing through us 24/7, we can't help but be fat, have bad hearts,
Mhm.
and have high blood pressure. But when we help each other and when we're doing things to cooperate with each other and innovate and all that good stuff, we have better outcomes. We have
Mhm.
less depression. We live longer.
Mhm.
So not
Yeah.
only are we happier, we're healthier. So it's
Yeah.
like Mother Nature screaming at us,
Yeah.
help each other, be of service to each
Yeah.
other. That's
Yeah.
where you're more successful. And so this was kind of my rant against that,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I am not in the business world at all, but paying attention to things going on today, what I am seeing is that when there are businesses that keep their customers in mind and go over and above to provide the service and the support for customers, the customers show up for them,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
right.
So, yeah.
More times than not, yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when they don't, it is simply because they feel like they don't have any other alternative.
Yeah.
Yes.
When companies and you can usually tell when a company ties you into a contract and says, "Well,
Oh, yeah.
fine, here on the dotted line, you're with us for 3 years, and you got to
Yeah.
suck up and do whatever you want." It's like when you get on a plane and okay, now you got to follow our rules. Door
Yeah.
is shut.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing, but we don't need to be that way.
Yeah. No.
You are absolutely right. Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful, Neal. Thank you for sharing all of that.
that was the little synopsis. It gets into more. It gets into more than that. But
Yeah.
but
Well,
that's
so
kind of
people read the book.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like a wonderful one. So, through all of this, have you, do you have any sort of life philosophy or motto or mantra that sort of gets you by, that's your go-to?
I have to say it's the last 4 words in that book. Go do some good.
Uh-huh.
That's the thing. I think that's why we're here.
Yeah. I love that.
My mom said, "You're here for a reason." I think we're all here for a reason. I think that's the beginning of it.
Yeah.
I think that's our next Soul Sistery shirt,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
Seth? Soul
Well,
Sisteries, go do some good.
yeah. And before I moved from California, we had a sign right at our front door. So every day when you walked out of the door, it said, "Do some good." So I love that. That's perfect.
Well, I'll get your addresses. I do have stickers. I'll send them to you. I'll send you guys
very
some
cool.
stickers. But here's
Very
the
cool.
deal. If I send you a sticker, you have to put it on something and send me a picture.
Oh, of
We'll
course.
do. We'll do. And I love the stickers.
I got the biggest compliment the other day. I sent it to a friend who I know, and she sent me a picture, and I got pride of place. She put it over the apple on her Mac.
I
There
like
you
it.
go.
The lit up
Yes.
apple on the back
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
lid
Yeah.
of the Mac. She
Yeah.
put it on that, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I beat out Steve Jobs."
Yes, there you go. Good for you. Good for you.
Things are going to start happening
yes.
for me now. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that would be my mantra these days
Yeah.
is go do some good.
Go do some good. Good.
That's a good mantra.
And at the end of this lifetime, anyways, when your journey here is done, how do you hope to be remembered?
This is the tombstone question,
Eh,
the eulogy question.
yeah. Not how much you made, but
I don't care about that. I guess it would be, I would hope somebody would say he helped me. He helped me be better than I thought I could be. If somebody says that, I'm done. I'm good.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. That you did that good. You've done that.
That's it exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that's probably a little sappy for some folks, but
No.
to me that's
Well, not here.
Not here. Yeah.
Sap lives and breathes here with abandon.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are among friends, my friend.
Yeah. So Donna, do you want to take us into our, rapid fire?
Let's do
questions?
it. Let's do it. These are fun little questions, Neal, that don't think too much about the answer. It's just whatever first comes to mind. Let's just go with it and see what it is. We say they're not hard, and then people will go, "Wow, that was a hard one." so it won't qualify. It is what
the
it is.
meaning of the universe.
Yes.
Well, let's see.
Exactly.
Okay.
We'll leave that one out.
Okay.
All right. First one. What is your walk-in song? the walking onto the stage, the walking to the pitcher's mound. What's your walk-in song?
Wow, I don't there are four things that come to mind
Say
oddly.
them all.
Okay, the first one that comes to mind is a song by Bruce Springsteen called Land of Hope and Glory.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is there's a line, the chorus of the song, he says, "This train carries," and he reels off things like kings and lost souls. And I know one of them is whores and gamblers, and one of them is like winners and losers. It's a list of things like that.
Uh-huh.
And whenever I hear that song, I think that's a place I want to be. I want to play a place where everybody's included.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what your title is, what your name is, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Second song that comes to mind is a song by Dave Matthews called "You Might Die Trying." And the chorus to that song is, "If you give, you begin to live." And that really, I mean, if you were to ask me what's in my book in a the Giving a Shit book in a nutshell, there you go. If you give, you begin to live. You'll be happier and healthier.
Yeah.
Then there's another song. This is because I love the Beatles. I'm just a massive Beatles fan. In fact, last year went with a friend and we went to Liverpool, London, and Hamburg to visit all the Beatles stuff.
Nice.
Fun.
And it's the song Blackbird.
Love it.
And the first thing is Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were waiting for this moment to arrive.
Beautiful.
And although that song was written for the civil rights movement in the U.S., it carries a different meaning for me. And that meaning is that essentially we're all broken. And people take that the wrong way. But we all are. We're all broken. None of us is perfect. We all have stuff in our lives that has fractured us in some way. But my thing is, regardless of that, get up. You've got something to do. Move forward. And when they say you were waiting for this moment to arrive, I say no. We're all waiting for that moment to arrive for you. I'm waiting for that from you. Get up. Show us what you are. Be something better than you ever thought you could be. Make this world a better place. That's, to me, what that song is. Yeah. And then the last one's not a song at all. It's a piece by Bach. And it's the last movement of Brandenburg Concerto No. 3. And if you don't know it, just look it up on YouTube. Listen to that last movement because it is joy it's just joy. It's just pure, unadulterated joy. It is just
look it up.
Life, it is so optimistic. It is so hopeful. And there's no words, but you'll just feel like I can take on the world listening to this. This is it,
You're the first person to mention an instrumental piece, a piece of music. Yeah. I love that.
I like that.
So, of course, from the musician.
Yes. Yeah.
Go for it, sis.
What book changed you?
Oddly, it's a book that's actually sitting here. And this is going to seem like a weird book, but it's a book. It's called The Outward Mindset. And it's not by a single person. It's by the Arbinger Institute. And I read it I think in 2013 or 2014. So it was late in coming. And the reason it changed me was because basically the theme of the book is that how do you see people? Do you see them as things or do you see them as people? And it has influenced so much of what I talk about and so much of what I think about these days.
Great.
It kind of gave me some language to use, but it also makes me think. I think, when I'm with somebody new or with somebody I'm talking to, am I seeing them as a person or as a thing?
Yeah.
Am I seeing them as an obstacle? Am I seeing them as a person? Especially these days with so much division around us, and so many people with views that I don't hold, it's hard. You get into a situation, you see somebody wearing a hat or wearing something you disagree with, and you go, I don't want to talk to them.
Right.
Am I seeing them as a person? How can I better see them as a person? It's a challenge,
Yep.
So in that way, it kind of changed changed. It didn't
Yeah.
change me, but it validated a lot of things for me.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Changed
gave
your
me
focus.
language.
Yeah.
And but it also gave me some language and a way to think about it in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It brought pieces together, so to speak.
Yeah.
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 Nice. Okay, next one. What movie lives rent-free in your brain?
Oh, usually, when people say that something lives rent free, it's a negative.
Oh no,
No.
we mean it as a
You love
what
it.
just has occupied and you think about and
Okay,
you quote
I'm going to
and
throw a couple. There are a
okay,
couple.
yeah.
I love movies. One movie, probably my favorite movie of all time, is Casablanca.
Mm.
And the reason I love Casablanca
Guilty.
is because it's got everything.
It sure does.
Love, war, peace, hate. It's got it all.
Yeah.
It's got like every theme in it. But the thing that strikes me is, you get to the end and good wins out.
Mm-hmm.
People do the right thing. When people do the right thing,
Yeah.
And I love in that movie there's such scope, it's such a large story, and yet it's a very small and intimate story as well. And both exist in that.
And it's just so well done. And it's got
Yeah.
Ingrid Bergman in it. Oh my God. The other one is it's a Tom Cruise movie, and I'm not a big Tom Cruise guy, but A Few Good Men, courtroom drama.
Yeah.
And the thing that stands out to me is right at the end when, if you know the movie,
yes,
when Dawson, the guy who's being charged with murder and is let off for murder, but he's given a court martial anyway for not behaving like an officer. And he's about to walk out of the room, and Tom Cruise says, "You don't have to, Harold, you don't need to have stripes on your arm to have honor." And all of a sudden, Harold turns around and says, "Attention, there's an officer on deck." And they salute each other. I'm like, yes. It's just such
Still
a great moment of respect and getting it.
Yeah.
It's like all these trappings we put on people and all the labels we put on mean nothing.
Right.
It's about how we treat each other and how we respect each other.
Which speaks to your life work. So that makes perfect sense.
And I say it a lot to people. Love changes everything.
Yeah, it does.
And that, that's a moment of love.
Yeah.
That's a moment of, I love you, dude.
Yeah.
Even though throughout the whole movie they're at loggerheads.
Right.
Yeah.
But wow.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. So those are a couple.
Beautiful.
Okay. What did you love doing as a kid that you still love doing today?
Oh, I can tell you a bunch of things the other way.
Oh, no.
Something I like doing
Yeah.
now. Oh,
That
that's a toughie.
Yeah.
Animals. I have always just absolutely loved dogs, cats, you name it. I to this day can't watch a movie that has a theme around an animal because I know somewhere in it something horrible is going to happen, so I can't see that. It's torture to me. Something happened to an animal.
Yeah. I have to peek ahead and I go online and make sure that the animal lives. Otherwise, I can't finish the movie.
I can't even see him suffer.
Yeah. No.
Right.
And what's, I guess, maybe the sad part of that is that I can watch people get blown away on TV all the time, but I can't see anything happen to an animal.
Yeah.
I have to either turn away, like those ads come up, with Sarah McLachlan singing in the background or whatever, Enya or whoever. And I'm like, okay, change the channel until that ad is over.
Yeah, for sure. You're not alone.
So, but that love for animals and being around animals and stopping for animals.
Yeah,
I still do that.
Yeah.
Well, that's gorgeous. So it is beautiful, that love and that connection, because of course, animals are right there pure and they're innocent and they're
unconditional. Which isn't really true. They need to be fed.
Yes.
Well, yes.
Yeah. But they still love. Yeah.
It's about the closest to unconditional that we can get.
Yeah. Okay. So what in your world is lighting you up right now?
Positively or negatively? Or both, either.
Well, however you receive that question, I guess.
Uh,
Yeah.
Current political state lights me up negatively.
Mm,
Some of the things that are going on that I just don't
mm,
agree with, but I don't want to
yeah.
get into
Yeah.
here.
You are in perfect company here.
Yeah.
Share
But
that.
things that light me up positively are, I think a lot of what's happening is waking some people up to
Mm,
what might be really important in life.
Amen,
yeah.
amen, amen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop
Yeah.
to stop making everything about profit and loss.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, isn't that the truth?
That
Yeah.
life, you know, there's a biological reason we're here, and that's to
Mm-hmm.
procreate.
Hmm.
But there's a very subjective reason we're here. A transformative reason
Yeah.
we're here, a transcendent reason, shall we
Yeah.
say? And that's about all that stuff you can't measure. And we
Right.
spend so much time over-indexed on what we can measure,
Oh
um,
gosh, yeah.
Mm,
and we don't think about. There's so much in life that's so important that you can't measure. There's a great line in um, the Dead Poet Society movie,
mm,
if you know that movie
mhm.
with
I
Robin
was
Williams.
just when we were talking a minute ago, it was the movie in my brain. So
Well,
yeah,
so
go for it.
Yeah.
where he says to the boys, he says, engineering, medicine, all these things are noble pursuits,
Mm-hmm.
but art, music, love, drama, that's why we live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are things that help us live, and then there's things that we live for.
Live for. Mm-hmm.
And something, I don't know, we seem to forget all that, and everything's got to be measured, and everything's got
Yeah.
to be, and then all of a sudden something happens, and people go, wait a minute. There's
Yeah.
love and art and drama and music, and there's things that's why I live. That's what I do.
Right.
People go home at night and they play in a garage band
Right.
and they make zero money doing it. Zero.
But they love it.
But they
Feeds their
love it.
souls. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What color is hope?
Mm. Hmm. Purple.
Purple.
What does hope sound like?
Bach Brandenburg Concerto number 3.
I was gonna
I
say.
said it. I can't. I mean, it's just so, or maybe even the Italian concerto, Bach's Italian concerto, which is for solo keyboard. It's again so optimistic and so hopeful, and it seems to say the world can be better than we can imagine.
Mm.
So Bach speaks to you. Also.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Well, he's one among many.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Service is what?
Helping people.
All right.
It's not big and fancy. I hate to tell you.
But that's okay.
And people
Yeah,
think it is. People put these big, giant
Yeah.
definitions. It's like, no, man,
Yeah.
it's just helping people.
Yeah. So,
You do it all day.
if hope is found through service, then hope is found through helping people. And I think that's
Hope is found through, we make hope happen
Mhm.
by helping others.
Yeah.
Hope is,
Yeah.
excuse me, hope is action is one of the key things that you've said here, and we absolutely agree with
Yeah.
what is.
And this is interesting because this morning, and I'm probably pushing time here, but if you look at compassion, I talk about compassion in the book.
Mhm.
Compassion is an awareness of need or suffering coupled to a desire to help.
Mm.
And if you think, a lot of people think hope, a lot of people talk about hope being like optimism. No, optimism is more like empathy. Empathy is, you put yourself in the shoes of another, blah, 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 but you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I can look at you and say, I know how that feels, but I don't have to do anything. Compassion means you've got to do something. Well, optimism, I can say, well, yeah, things are going to work out. It's going to be a great world, but I don't have to do anything. But hope says, no, you got to do something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
compassion says, you got to do something.
Yeah. Right. You can't just sit back.
I love that. I love that. All right. So then hope is, complete that statement. Hope is.
The belief, and belief is a big deal, but it's the belief that everything around us can get better.
Yeah.
And I can influence that. I can contribute to it.
Yeah.
Oh God, what an important piece that is. And
Yeah.
I can contribute to it.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love
I can
that,
make that
Neal.
choice. I can make that choice. Yeah.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up, Neal, I know you shared your book, you shared the teachings you're doing, you do a lot of traveling, it sounds like. How can people find you? Is there a Facebook page, a website?
I'm on LinkedIn, obviously. That's a great place to connect. Just dial me up, Neal Woodson. And it's important that you put the A in. Everybody likes Neil, but
yeah.
My mom and dad decided to go with the Welsh spelling, Neal.
Okay.
Yes, well, I'm Donna with one N, so I can.
Yeah, you have the same life that I do.
Yes.
You can go to my website, and that's very easy. Neal Woodson, all one word, NealWoodson .net, not .com. It's a .net.
Yep.
And there you can find links to my book. You can find out more about me. I blog once a week. There's always a post in there. There's probably 400 or 500 in there now.
Oh, wow.
That you can go back and search and find all kinds of things.
Great.
And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me at servicecoach1@gmail.com. Servicecoach, all one word, the number one, at gmail.com.
Okay.
That's a place you can reach me if you want to.
Great. And your books, are those on your website? Or?
Yes, they both are. And you can get them both at most of the places where you get books.
Yeah.
But a great place to get books is, what's it called? Bookshop.
Okay.
Which supports a lot of independent
Great. Yes.
bookstores and things like that.
We love that. Neal, we want to thank you so much for taking time today to spend with us, share with us your insights, what you're doing, who you are. It's been a real joy for us to share this time with you and get to know you and call you part of the Soul Sisterhood. So thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, it's nice to be an honorary sister.
Yeah.
But
There's
I
room.
really appreciate it. It's great to get to know you. I hope we see each other again.
Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
And again, thanks, Kirk. Thanks for inviting me. And it's been an absolute pleasure.
A big shout out to our Kirk.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kirk, for bringing us all together.
Yeah. Yes.
We appreciate you all. So thank you, Neal. And, go do some good, my friend.
Yes.
Go do some good, as we all will.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today on Soul Sisteries.
And thanks for sharing stories with us. We'd love to hear your stories as well and keep the conversation going, absolutely keeping the hope going. So we're really hopeful that you'll connect with our guests as well who have great stories to share. Go ahead and follow them in various social media platforms or live venues, wherever it is that they're performing and sharing what they do.
We would love to have you follow us on all of our social media platforms, subscribe and rate, as that will help us get our message of hope out to others.
Thanks for listening to Soul Sisteries.